The dawn broke over the Sierra Nevada mountains in fractured rays of amber and gold. Dr. Raya Lin stood on the observation deck of Skybridge Initiative's main facility, her eyes fixed not on the sunrise, but on the massive orbital structure visible through the specialized telescope. The final ring around Sol, humanity's greatest achievement, was nearing completion. 6 months of relentless work had brought them here, to the moment when humankind would fully harness their star. Raya adjusted the viewfinder, zooming in on the construction drones swarming like metallic insects around the last junction point. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message from the orbital team. Junction Alpha 9 secured. Ring integrity at 98%. We're ahead of schedule. Dr. Lin. She allowed herself a small smile. After 15 years of planning, design conflicts, and near-catastrophic setbacks, the Skybridge Initiative was about to fulfill its promise. Earth would never again face the threat of solar instability. The cage around their sun would regulate its output, prevent solar flares, and extend the star's life by an estimated 2 billion years. Acknowledged, she replied. Proceed with the final calibration sequence. As she lowered her tablet, a flicker of movement caught her peripheral vision, something in the clouds above the facility. She squinted, searching the dawn sky, but whatever it was had vanished. Probably just an atmospheric disturbance from the orbital transports, she thought. Her assistant, Maya, pushed through the glass doors onto the deck, her face flushed with excitement. They're starting the celebration early in Geneva, Maya said, holding up her own tablet displaying a live stream of champagne-soaked scientists embracing at mission control. Secretary General Alvarez is making a speech about humanity's greatest triumph. Raya nodded absently, her mind still on the fleeting disturbance she'd witnessed. Any word from Crystal? Maya's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Nothing. The Galactic Council's ambassador hasn't responded to any communications in 72 hours. That was troubling. Crystal, the name humanity had given to the translucent, vaguely humanoid representative of the distant Galactic Council, had been Earth's primary extraterrestrial contact for the past decade. Their warnings about solar instability had been the catalyst for the Skybridge Initiative in the first place. Now, at the moment of triumph, their silence felt ominous. Keep trying, Raya said, and get me the latest atmospheric readings. Something doesn't feel right. Maya raised an eyebrow but didn't question her superior. She'd learned long ago that Dr. Raya Lin's intuition was rarely wrong. Inside her office, Raya pulled up the orbital feeds on her wall display. The final ring gleamed in the sunlight, its neural lattice surface absorbing and redirecting solar energy in carefully calculated patterns. Humanity had effectively put their star on life support, and in the process, gained nearly godlike control over their own solar system. Yet, as she stared at the achievement, a hollow feeling spread through her chest. 10 years ago, when she'd first presented the theoretical framework for star caging, her brother Jonah had been her most enthusiastic supporter. Now, he led the Earth First Coalition, a radical faction convinced that tampering with cosmic forces would bring alien retribution. The last time they'd spoken had been at their mother's funeral 3 years ago, and even then, they'd exchanged barely 10 words. Her desk phone rang, jolting her from her thoughts. The caller ID showed Global Defense Network. This is Dr. Lin. Doctor, this is General Hayes. Are your atmospheric sensors picking up anything unusual? Raya felt a chill run down her spine. I was just about to check. Why? We're getting reports from monitoring stations worldwide. Movement patterns in the upper atmosphere that don't match any known weather phenomena. Started about 20 minutes ago, intensifying rapidly. She pulled up the atmospheric data on her second screen. The readings were impossible. Massive air currents moving against prevailing winds, forming coherent patterns that defied natural explanation. I see it, she said, her voice tight. Have you notified? Her words died as emergency alerts flashed across all her screens simultaneously. The message was the same on each one. "The sky is moving." "Dr. Lin," General Hayes said, his military calm betrayed by a slight tremor. "I think you should look outside." Raya rushed back to the observation deck. The sunrise had fully broken now, illuminating a sight that stopped her heart. The clouds above the facility were swirling, coalescing, forming what could only be described as a massive, vaguely humanoid shape. A face, miles wide, gazed down at the Skybridge facility, with eyes formed from spiraling nimbus clouds. As she watched, frozen in disbelief, the shape raised an arm composed of mist and morning light, pointing directly at the orbital telescope aimed at the sun cage. Her tablet erupted with notifications. Similar phenomena were being reported over major cities worldwide. The sky itself was taking human form. Earth's greatest triumph had awakened something ancient, something that would not let humanity cage a star without consequence. The world would never be the same again. Within hours, emergency sessions had convened in every major government. Satellite imagery confirmed what ground observers were reporting. Massive, translucent humanoid figures had formed in the atmosphere over population centers on every continent. They moved with deliberate purpose, their cloud bodies shifting and reforming, but maintaining recognizable human shapes. In the Skybridge Initiative's Crisis Center, Raya stood before a wall of screens displaying the phenomena worldwide. Scientists, military personnel, and government officials crowded the room, their voices a cacophony of theories and fears. "They're maintaining position above major population centers," reported Colonel Diaz, pointing to a global map with glowing markers indicating each manifestation. "No aggressive movements detected, but they're not responding to any communication attempts." "What about readings?" Raya asked, addressing the room at large. "Radiation, electromagnetic signatures, anything." Dr. Hassan, head of atmospheric sciences, stepped forward. "That's what's strange, Dr. Lin. They're composed entirely of water vapor, dust particles, and atmospheric gases, normal components of our atmosphere. But they're moving against wind patterns, defying gravity, maintaining cohesion without any detectable energy source." "Could it be some kind of advanced holographic projection?" suggested a representative from European intelligence. General Hayes shook his head. "We've ruled that out. These entities are physically altering air currents and cloud formations. They're as real as the air we breathe." A hush fell over the room as the main screen switched to a live feed from Tokyo. The sky being there was lowering what appeared to be a hand toward the city center. People fled, screaming through the streets as the massive, misty fingers descended. "Are they attacking?" someone whispered. But instead of destruction, the cloud hand merely hovered above a crowded intersection. From its fingertips, tiny wisps of vapor spiraled down to street level, where they coalesced into smaller, child-sized humanoid forms that moved among the terrified citizens. The audio feed captured fragments of sound, not quite speech, but something eerily similar. Distorted voices speaking in multiple languages simultaneously, like thousands of whispers overlapping. "We need to decode those sounds," Raya said, breaking the stunned silence. "And I want every satellite we have redirected to monitor these entities. If they're communicating, we need to understand what they're saying." Her phone vibrated with an incoming call. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in years, Jonah Lin. She stepped away from the group, her heart pounding. "Jonah?" "They came, just as Crystal warned." Her brother's voice was tense, accusatory. "The consequences of caging a star?" "We don't know what they are yet," Raya countered, keeping her voice low. "There's no evidence they're hostile." "No?" Jonah laughed bitterly. "They appeared the moment you completed the final ring. You think that's coincidence? You've awakened something, Raya. Something ancient and powerful. If you have information, share it. Otherwise, The Earth First Coalition is mobilizing, he cut her off. We're activating all our resources, including Helios. Raya felt the blood drain from her face. Helios was an advanced AI defense system Jonah had developed before their falling out, before he'd left mainstream science for his radical organization. She'd thought the project had been shut down. Jonah, don't. We need to understand them first. They're here to judge us, sister, for our arrogance in believing we could imprison a star. And I intend to show them we will defend ourselves. The line went dead. Raya stood frozen, her mind racing. If Jonah activated Helios against these entities, it could trigger a conflict humanity might not survive. She rejoined the crisis team. Her decision made? I need a direct line to Secretary General Alvarez and prepare the quantum communication array. We're going to attempt contact with these beings. As the team scrambled to fulfill her requests, Raya returned to the atmospheric data. There was something familiar about the patterns, something that tickled the edge of her scientific intuition. The way the entities formed and moved reminded her of. Her eyes widened as realization struck. She pulled up historical atmospheric data from before the industrial age and compared it to the current readings. The match was undeniable. They're not attacking, she whispered to herself. They're remembering. The United Nations Security Council chamber was filled beyond capacity. World leaders who couldn't attend in person joined via secure holographic projections, their translucent forms adding to the tension in the room. Above the New York skyline, visible through the chamber's expansive windows, one of the largest sky beings hovered, its misty face seemingly turned toward the emergency session. Secretary General Alvarez stood at the podium, his normally commanding presence diminished by the unprecedented crisis. The world looks to us for leadership in this moment, he began, his voice steady despite the pressure. We face an unknown entity, or entities, that have manifested in our atmosphere without warning or explanation. Raya sat in the Science Advisor section, her tablet displaying real-time data from Skybridge's global sensor network. She'd spent the last 12 hours analyzing the phenomena, and what she'd discovered had changed everything. Before we proceed with response options, Alvarez continued, I invite Dr. Raya Lin, head of the Skybridge Initiative, to present her preliminary findings. As Raya approached the podium, murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many blamed the Skybridge project for triggering this crisis. She could feel the weight of their accusatory stares. Distinguished representatives, she began. What we are witnessing is unprecedented, but I believe we have mischaracterized the nature of these manifestations. They are not visitors or invaders from beyond our world. She activated the chamber's holographic display, showing a three-dimensional model of one of the sky beings, alongside complex atmospheric data. These entities are composed entirely of elements from Earth's own atmosphere, but they're organized by what appears to be a previously unknown form of consciousness, one that has existed within our planet's atmospheric systems for millennia, perhaps longer. Skeptical murmurs grew louder. The Russian representative interrupted. Are you suggesting our sky is alive, Dr. Lin? Not exactly, Raya replied. I'm suggesting that our atmosphere contains a memory, a record of every human who has ever lived and breathed on this planet. These manifestations appear to be that collective memory taking conscious form. She displayed a spectrographic analysis of the sounds captured from various sky beings worldwide. We've analyzed the audio emissions from these entities. They contain fragments of human speech spanning all recorded languages, including many that are extinct. But they're not random. They're organized into patterns that suggest communication. The Chinese representative leaned forward. What are they trying to communicate, Doctor? Raya hesitated, aware that her next words would sound almost mystical rather than scientific. Based on our preliminary analysis, they appear to be saying, we have always been here. We are your ancestors. We have come to remind you. The chamber erupted in a mixture of disbelief, fear, and wonder. Secretary General Alvarez called for order, but the commotion continued until a deep, resonant sound penetrated the room, a sound coming from the sky being hovering outside. The windows vibrated with the force of it. Not a threat, but a summons. The being's massive face turned fully toward the UN building, its features becoming more distinct, more human. In its cloudy countenance, many in the room could see traces of faces, thousands of them, appearing and disappearing like memories. "They're responding to us," Raya said, her voice barely audible above the collective gasp of the assembly. "They know we're talking about them." Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Jonah Lin strode in, flanked by members of the Earth First Coalition. Despite years of estrangement, Raya immediately recognized the determined set of her brother's jaw, the same expression he'd worn as a child when convinced he was right. "This assembly delays while humanity faces judgment," Jonah announced, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone that had once made him a respected scientist. "These are not our ancestors. They are cosmic enforcers, drawn by our hubris in caging a star." He approached the podium, ignoring protocols and security. The guards hesitated, uncertain how to respond during such an unprecedented crisis. "My organization has analyzed these entities using technology beyond what governments possess," Jonah continued. "They are constructs of dark matter, using our atmosphere as a physical interface, and they are preparing to render verdict on our species." Raya stepped forward, unwilling to let her brother's unfounded claims go unchallenged. "Jonah, your analysis is incomplete. We've found evidence these manifestations are connected to Earth's own biosphere, a form of planetary consciousness responding to the Skybridge Initiative. A consciousness that objects to our tampering with the sun," Jonah countered. "Which is exactly what I've warned about for years." Secretary General Alvarez attempted to regain control of the session. "Dr. Lin, both of you, this is not the forum for a scientific debate. We need actionable recommendations." Jonah turned to address the entire assembly. "I have your actionable recommendation. The Earth First Coalition has activated Helios, an advanced defense system capable of disrupting these entities at the quantum level. We can disperse them before they dispense whatever cosmic justice they've come to deliver." Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Helios had been classified as too dangerous for deployment years ago, a system designed to manipulate fundamental forces in ways that could have catastrophic side effects. "Jonah, no," Raya grabbed her brother's arm. "You can't attack them. Not until we understand what they are." "I understand perfectly well what they are," he hissed, pulling away from her. "I've spent years studying the warnings Crystal delivered before going silent. These are the guardians they spoke of, the ones who maintain cosmic balance." Before Raya could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. On every screen, emergency broadcasts showed the sky beings worldwide beginning to move in unison. They were descending lower, their massive forms casting shadowless dimness over major cities. "We're out of time," Jonah declared. "Helios activates in 30 minutes. Either support our defense of humanity or stand aside." As chaos erupted in the chamber, Raya made a desperate decision. She needed to establish definitive communication with the sky beings before her brother triggered a potentially catastrophic conflict. And there was only one way to do that. She needed to get closer to them. Much closer. The Skybridge Initiative's atmospheric research vessel wasn't designed for the maneuver Raya was attempting. The sleek aircraft shuddered as it climbed to 30,000 feet, directly into the heart of the sky being hovering above Manhattan. "Hull integrity holding," reported the pilot, Captain Rodriguez, his knuckles white on the controls. "But we're experiencing severe turbulence from the entity's atmospheric manipulation." Beside him, Raya monitored the sensor array she'd hastily installed before takeoff. The readings were off the charts, not just unusual weather patterns, but something far more complex. The being's cloud body contained trillions of microscopic structures that resembled human neurons. "It's a brain," she whispered, more to herself than to her nervous crew. "A brain made of atmosphere." Maya, who had insisted on accompanying her mentor despite the risks, peered over Raya's shoulder at the data. "Those patterns, they look like memory engrams." "Exactly," Raya nodded. "But not individual memories, these are collective, shared across generations." The aircraft penetrated deeper into the entity's misty form. Outside the windows, swirling vapors took on colors and textures that seemed almost like flowing fabrics, skin tones, and human features seen through a fog. "Activating the quantum resonance scanner," Raya announced, powering up the experimental device she'd developed for deep space communication. "If these beings operate on a quantum level as Jonah suspects, this might allow us to establish a more coherent connection." The scanner hummed to life, sending precisely calibrated energy pulses into the surrounding vapor. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then the mist outside began to glow with an inner light, pulsing in rhythm with the scanner. "It's responding!" Maya gasped. The aircraft's communication system crackled with sudden interference, a cascade of voices speaking in overlapping patterns. Fragments of languages ancient and modern flowing together like a river of human expression. Raya adjusted the scanner's parameters, attempting to filter the cacophony into something comprehensible. Slowly, the voices resolved into a single, collective speech, still composed of countless individual voices, but now speaking in unison. "We have watched, we have waited, we have remembered." The words weren't in any specific language but somehow conveyed meaning directly to their minds. The entire crew froze, transfixed by the communication. "Who are you?" Raya asked, speaking into the scanner's receiver. The mist pressed closer to the aircraft windows, forming into faces that appeared and dissolved in rapid succession. Men, women, and children of every human ethnicity and era. "We are the breath of all who came before. Every exhalation, every spoken word, every dying gasp, preserved in the memory of sky." Maya clutched Raya's arm, her eyes wide. "They're saying they're made from the actual breath of our ancestors, the air molecules that have been recycled through countless human lungs throughout history." The realization struck Raya with stunning clarity. Earth's atmosphere had been recycling the same molecules for billions of years. Every breath taken by every human who had ever lived remained in the air in some form. And somehow, impossibly, those collective exhalations had developed a kind of consciousness, a memory of humanity itself. "Why have you revealed yourselves now?" Raya asked, her scientific mind struggling to process the metaphysical implications. The mist faces swirled more rapidly, their expressions shifting from serene to concerned. "The star cage. You have trapped the source without understanding the consequence. Earth grieves for its companion. We could not let it grieve alone." Raya's heart pounded as the pieces fell into place. The Skybridge Initiative had approached the sun as a mere astronomical object, a nuclear furnace to be controlled and harnessed. But what if stars and planets shared connections more profound than gravity and radiation? What if Earth's biosphere, including its atmosphere, had evolved in constant dialogue with the sun? "We didn't understand," she admitted. "We sought only to protect our world from solar instability. Protection becomes prison when imposed without consent." The collective voice responded. "The star nurtures. The star creates. The star destroys when necessary. This is the cycle you have interrupted." Captain Rodriguez's voice broke the momentary silence that followed. "Dr. Lin, we have an urgent communication from UN headquarters." Raya reluctantly turned away from the mesmerizing faces in the mist. "Put it through." Secretary General Alvarez's voice was tight with tension. "Dr. Lin, your brother has initiated the Helios Protocol. Defense systems worldwide are targeting the atmospheric entities with quantum disruption waves. You have less than 15 minutes to clear the area." Cold fear gripped Raya's chest. "Mr. Secretary, you must stop him. These beings aren't a threat, they're trying to communicate something crucial about our relationship with the sun. The Security Council is divided, Alvarez replied grimly. Half believe these are benevolent entities, half fear they're harbingers of something worse. But the decision may be out of our hands. Your brother's coalition has leveraged emergency protocols to gain control of key defense installations. The transmission ended abruptly as the aircraft began to shake more violently. Outside, the glowing mist darkened, swirling faster. They know, Maya whispered. They can sense the weapons targeting them. Raya made an instant decision. Captain, set course for the Skybridge Command Center immediately. Maximum speed. That's where Jonah will be coordinating the Helios attack, Maya realized. Exactly, Raya confirmed. And I'm the only one who might be able to stop him. As the aircraft banked sharply, beginning its rapid descent, the mist faces pressed against the windows one final time. Their expressions had changed, no longer curious or concerned, but resolute. We have remembered you, Raya Lin, the collective voice spoke, now sounding more like a chorus of distinct individuals rather than a single entity. We have carried the breath of your ancestors within us. We will not let Earth's children destroy themselves in ignorance. Then, the aircraft burst through the lower boundary of the sky being, emerging into clear air with a violent jolt that threw everyone against their restraints. Behind them, the massive entity began to change shape, stretching and flowing toward the horizon, toward the Skybridge facility where Helios was about to launch its attack. It was a race against time, with the fate of two consciousnesses hanging in the balance. The Skybridge Command Center had transformed into a military operation. Armed guards patrolled the corridors, and the main control room bristled with weapons and grim-faced Earth-First Coalition members. At the center of it all stood Jonah Lin, directing operations with the confident precision that had once made him a brilliant scientist. When Raya burst through the doors, breathless from running, her brother barely glanced up from the holographic display showing Helios deployment worldwide. I expected you'd try to interfere, he said flatly. But you're too late. The quantum disruptors are aligned and charging. Jonah, listen to me, Raya pleaded, approaching slowly as guards raised their weapons. I've made contact with them. They're not what you think. Stand down, Jonah ordered the guards, finally turning to face his sister. Despite years of separation, the family resemblance was striking. The same determined set of their jaws, the same intensity in their eyes. Let her speak. It won't change anything, but I'll grant her that courtesy. Raya stepped forward, displaying her tablet with the recorded data from their encounter. The sky beings are a conscious manifestation of Earth's atmosphere, a memory consciousness formed from the collective breath of every human who has ever lived. They appeared because they sensed Earth's distress at our caging of the sun. Jonah studied the data with a scientist's precision, his expression unreadable. Interesting theory. Completely unprovable, of course. I heard them, Jonah. We all did. They spoke to us. And what did these ancestral ghosts have to say? His tone was mocking, but his eyes betrayed genuine curiosity. That we've interrupted a natural cycle between Earth and Sun. That protection becomes prison when imposed without consent. Raya held her brother's gaze. They're not here to judge us, Jonah. They're here to remind us. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Jonah's face. Then, his expression hardened again. Even if you're right, which I doubt, it doesn't change the fact that we've drawn the attention of forces beyond our comprehension. Forces that could destroy us with a thought. They don't want to destroy us. They're part of us. Then, why are they converging on major population centers? Why have they begun forming new configurations over our defense installations? He gestured to the global display, where the sky beings were indeed shifting, flowing toward military bases and weapons platforms. Raya studied the movement patterns, her scientific mind racing. They're responding to the threat. Helios is targeting them, and they sense it. Or they're preparing to strike, Jonah countered. I can't risk the fate of humanity on your mystical interpretation. Sister. A technician interrupted urgently. Sir, quantum disruptors at 90% charge. All systems aligned for simultaneous discharge in 3 minutes. Raya knew she had one last chance. Jonah, remember what Mother taught us? About indigenous views of the sky? Something flickered in her brother's eyes. A memory from their childhood, when their anthropologist mother would tell them stories from cultures around the world. Stories about the sky as ancestor, as memory keeper, as the breath of creation. Ancient myths, he dismissed, but with less conviction. Or ancient knowledge, Raya pressed. What if they understood something we've forgotten? That the air we breathe connects us to everyone who came before, and everyone who will come after. Outside the facility's windows, the sky darkened as one of the entities descended toward them, its massive form blotting out the sun. Faces formed in the swirling clouds, thousands of them, distinct yet unified. 1 minute to discharge, the technician announced. Jonah stared at the approaching entity, conflict evident in his expression. If I'm wrong, we lose nothing. If you're wrong, we lose everything. That's not true, Raya said softly. If you're wrong, we attack the collective memory of our own species. We reject our ancestors and their wisdom. We choose fear over understanding. The room fell silent except for the countdown. The massive face outside pressed closer to the windows, its features resolving into a startling clarity. Among the thousands of faces swirling in the mist, one became briefly prominent. A face both siblings recognized instantly. Their mother. 30 seconds, the technician's voice wavered. Jonah's hands trembled as he stared at the impossible image. It's a trick, he whispered. But doubt had fully claimed him now. It's a reminder, Raya said, placing her hand on her brother's arm. We're not alone, Jonah. We've never been alone. Every breath we take connects us to those who came before. The countdown continued. 20 seconds. With a sudden movement, Jonah pulled away from his sister and rushed to the main control panel. His fingers flew over the interface, entering a complex sequence of commands. Override Protocol Alpha 69, he announced, his voice steady once more. Authorization Lin J 1.845. Stand down all Helios systems immediately. Alarms blared as the system registered the override. On screens throughout the command center, weapon platforms worldwide began powering down, quantum disruptors cycling to inactive status. Sir, questioned his second-in-command, clearly shocked by the reversal. I said stand down, Jonah repeated firmly. We will attempt communication instead of attack. Relief flooded through Raya, but it was short-lived. On the global monitors, several military installations continued their attack preparations, ignoring the override command. Some systems aren't responding, the technician reported frantically. 3 installations in the North American sector and 2 in Eastern Europe are proceeding with discharge sequence. Jonah's face paled. Those are autonomous defense modules. They're programmed to continue attack protocols even if Central Command is compromised. We can't stop them remotely. Outside, the sky being seemed to sense the partial stand-down, its vast form pulsing with light in a pattern that suggested gratitude. But the entity remained in position, perhaps aware that the threat hadn't fully passed. We need to warn them, Raya said urgently. The quantum disruption could cause catastrophic damage to their consciousness structure. There's no time, Jonah replied grimly. Discharge in 10 seconds. The siblings watched in helpless horror as the countdown reached 0. On the monitors, 5 brilliant energy pulses erupted from defense installations around the world, streaking upward toward the sky beings. The quantum disruption waves struck their targets with devastating effect. Where they hit, the misty forms of the entities tore apart, cloud substance dispersing in chaotic patterns. Massive holes appeared in the beings, their coherent structures fragmenting like shattered glass. In the Skybridge facility, the entity outside convulsed, as if in sympathetic pain with its kindred, pressing against the windows with sudden force that made the reinforced glass creak ominously. "What have we done?" Jonah whispered, watching the destruction unfold on the global monitors. But then, something unexpected happened. The damaged entities didn't dissipate or collapse. Instead, the torn edges of their cloud forms began to reach toward each other, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The holes began to close as atmospheric currents realigned, vapor coalescing, structures rebuilding. They were healing themselves. More than that, they were demonstrating a resilience and adaptability that defied explanation. The quantum disruption should have permanently scattered their consciousness patterns. Yet they were reforming, learning, becoming more cohesive than before. "Remarkable!" Jonah breathed, scientific wonder temporarily overriding his fear. "They're evolving in response to the attack." Outside their window, the sky being pressed closer still, its face, now a composite of countless human features, regarding them with an expression that conveyed not anger, but profound sadness. The glass finally gave way with a splintering crack, and misty tendrils flowed into the command center. Guards raised weapons, but Jonah waved them down. "No more attacks," he ordered. "Let it come." The mist filled the room, surrounding everyone present. It felt neither cold nor warm, neither wet nor dry. It felt like breath itself, like the most intimate connection to another living being. And within that mist came voices, not the unified chorus from before, but distinct, individual voices speaking in countless languages. Ancestors. Millions of them, their memories preserved in the very air molecules that had once filled their lungs. In that moment of connection, both Raya and Jonah understood what the sky beings had been trying to communicate all along. The sun wasn't merely a star to be caged for human benefit. It was Earth's ancient partner in a dance of life and death that had shaped everything on the planet. By caging it, humanity had interrupted rhythms older than their species, cycles necessary for the planet's evolution. But the sky beings hadn't come to punish. They had come to remember, to remind, and to help humanity find a better way forward. As the mist gradually withdrew, returning to the massive entity outside, it left behind a lingering message in the minds of everyone present, not in words, but in a profound understanding that transcended language. "We are your ancestors. Come to remind you of unity. We will help you find balance again." Jonah turned to his sister, years of estrangement dissolving in the face of this shared experience. "I was wrong," he admitted simply. "Not about the danger, but about its nature." Raya nodded, already turning to the control systems. "We need to modify the sun cage, not dismantle it entirely, but transform it from prison to partnership." "Is that even possible?" Jonah asked, moving to join her at the console. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think we'll have help." Outside, the sky being had begun to rise, rejoining others that were now flowing toward the orbital ring around the sun. Not to destroy it, but to transform it, to teach humanity a new way of working with cosmic forces, rather than dominating them. The siblings watched as the sky itself reached toward the stars, carrying the collective wisdom of every human who had ever breathed Earth's air. It was not an ending, but a beginning, a remembering that would change everything. 6 months later, Raya stood on the same observation deck where she'd first noticed the disturbance in the clouds. Beside her stood Jonah, their renewed relationship still tentative, but strengthening day by day. Above them, the sky shimmered with a perpetual aurora, a living veil of ancestral consciousness that now encircled the planet. The sky beings had not departed. They had transformed, becoming guardians rather than harbingers. The modifications to the solar array are complete, Jonah reported, showing her the latest data on his tablet. The new configuration allows for natural solar cycles, while still protecting Earth from catastrophic flares. Raya nodded, studying the readings. And the quantum integration with the atmospheric consciousness? Stable. The sky beings, or the ancestral collective, as the UN has started calling them, seem pleased with the arrangement. They're helping us understand solar patterns we never would have discovered on our own. It had been a revolution in human understanding. The realization that Earth's atmosphere contained the literal breath of ancestors, preserved, recycled, and eventually awakened into consciousness, had transformed not just science but philosophy, religion, and culture worldwide. Maya approached, excitement evident in her stride. The communication array just picked up a signal from Crystal. Both siblings turned in surprise. The Galactic Council's ambassador had remained silent throughout the crisis, leaving humanity to face the awakening alone. "What did they say?" Raya asked. Maya smiled. "Just 3 words. You have remembered?" Understanding dawned on both their faces. Crystal's silence hadn't been abandonment. It had been a necessary withdrawal to allow humanity to discover the sky beings on their own, to remember their connection to their ancestors, to Earth, and to the cosmos. "So what now?" Jonah asked, gazing up at the shimmering aurora that contained the memories of countless generations. Raya followed his gaze upward. "Now we listen. We learn. We remember that we're part of something much larger than ourselves." The aurora pulsed in response, as if acknowledging her words. Within its shifting patterns, faces formed and dissolved, ancestors watching over their descendants, guiding them toward a future where stars and planets and people existed not in hierarchy, but in harmony. Secretary General Alvarez had called it humanity's second chance, an opportunity to redefine their relationship with the cosmos. The Skybridge Initiative had been transformed from a project of control to one of collaboration, working with the ancestral collective to understand the deeper rhythms of their star and planet. As twilight deepened into night, the siblings remained on the observation deck, watching the dance of ancestral memories against the backdrop of stars. For the first time since childhood, they stood together in perfect understanding, their scientific minds open to mysteries beyond calculation. Earth had grieved when its star was caged, and that grief had awakened the oldest memory of all, that nothing in the cosmos ever truly stands alone. The sky had turned human to remind humanity of its place in an interconnected universe. And in that remembering, they had found not limitation, but liberation, not an ending, but a beginning. Above them, the aurora shifted into a new configuration, forming what looked like a protective hand cradling the planet. The ancestors were keeping their promise. Earth and its children would never have to grieve alone again.